Trey Wallace Podcast, another edition. Happy to be joined by my first guest that ever came on the show. That was a while ago. Braden Gall from 440 Sports joins us today. Braden, what's up, brother?
How you doing, man? Good to see you, bud.
I'm good, man. Coming off, a Senior Bowl week. We're in Super Bowl week now, and there's never a downtime. I mean, Alabama's hiring coordinators. We're getting Jaden Rashada stories, which is great, from Florida. It never stops for us, man.
How was the swamp life last week? You got oysters, you got cold beer, you got seniors practicing football. It's that swamp life, baby.
Man, it was, it was good. It was good. It's always good to get back home because I don't get to go home often. But it was good. You get down there, you get on the river, get yourself some good seafood.
Yeah, baby.
It's hot as hell. We
had Nashville had snow days for our kids, and there was no snow. It's ridiculous.
I'm sitting there watching you guys on social media and the weather bug app flipping out because there's ice and everything in town, and I'm down in Mobile and it's 78 degrees in February. So it is what it is. I mean, it was fun. Got to see a lot of people hadn't seen in a while. A lot of coaches, that come down there. Haven't seen in a while. I got to catch up with T. Martin for a little bit, which was nice. But everybody swarms him when he comes down there. So, but it was good, man. Thanks for asking. But I mean, a lot of crazy stuff that happens just days after we get going there. And I want to, before I get into the Alabama stuff, I was about to say mess, but Alabama stuff that's going on right now with the coordinators. I want to talk about this Jaden Rashada thing because we've talked about NIL before, me and you, and you look at right now what has happened but we knew the number, like the 13.85 that had been out there for a couple weeks now, maybe in a month. But you break down a contract like that and you look at the over $200,000 a month in the first year, $300,000, by the junior year, and the $500,000 signing bonus that it would have been if he'd have played there. Did Florida dodge a bullet for future recruiting when this deal went south?
I don't know about that. What's weird, I don't know about you. I don't think it's sort of the entire NIL national story wrapped up into one individual story.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's the player's fault, because if somebody offers you a NFL contract, because let's be honest, that's what it was. I mean, Kenny Pickett's deal as a first-round quarterback for the Steelers is basically identical. 4 years, $14 million. It's basically the same. Now, Rashada's deal was up to 13 point whatever 8. It wasn't necessarily guaranteed to get that high, but it's not really his fault or his family's fault or his friend's fault or whoever's looking out for him to say, take the best deal you can. The reported deal for Miami's a little under $10 million.
Right.
So, and again, that wasn't all the switch to Florida. Some of it, obviously, but he liked Florida a lot before he committed to Miami. I don't really think it's Billy Napier's fault or Florida's fault.
Nope.
I'm not even 100% sure it's the collective's fault. Somebody at the collective failed, but it's really the booster who promised a bunch of money and then just said, no, I'm not going to do that. Now, I think to Billy Napier and to Florida's credit, they let him out of the scholarship. Like they did everything kind of right by each other. It's just this one guy who maybe wanted to, or a small group of boosters that just wanted to write a big check. I am curious, Trey, and you can tell me what you think about this.
Yeah.
We used to pay players on production. It wasn't legal, but you run for 150 yards, you get a bag after the game.
Yeah. $1,000 handshake.
Right. Whatever. Nice job, dude. Good job. You pay for production. I am curious. I run a small business. We had Vanderbilt quarterback Ken Seals on every Monday last year. We worked a deal out with him for him to be on, but I needed ROI on that. Vanderbilt fans got really great insight by talking to what was their starting quarterback at the beginning of the year, at least. Yeah. But we got a lot of information. We got insight. We got traffic. We got audience. We needed ROI off of that contract with Ken Seals. Now we can't. We're not playing in the $13 million range. But if you're a booster, again, whoever buys Bentleys and Rolls Royces and Lamborghinis for just because they have the money, they just have money lying around.
Right.
So they're not necessarily looking for ROI. So I'm curious where this all goes, because there are always going to be rich people with money to burn at every school, especially in the SEC.
Yeah.
But around the country. And if it's now paying for projection, not paying for production. And so I'm curious, quarterbacks are about a 50-50 proposition when they're 4 and 5 stars, when they're that highly rated. It's a pretty risky proposition, but is it worth it for someone who just like has the Vanderbilt biggest booster has, he's got $8 million like in the cup holder of the car.
You know what I mean? Built a soccer stadium.
Right. It's like, $8 million is a rounding error for Jimmy Haslam. So like, I don't, like it's, so if you have that much money, does it matter if a player pans out or not? Maybe not. But for everybody else who's paying for NIL stuff, small deals, small businesses, charities, local restaurants, like all these little places, like we need ROI on this stuff. And frankly, I think what's lost in all of this is what's really good, which is if Jaden Rashada was signing autographs for kids at a restaurant or a charity or a little league stadium or whatever, like the end result of the deal is actually something that's really cool for the community. It's actually really good.
I agree.
think that's lost. That's lost in all of this. I don't think it's going to get any better though, Trey. I think it's going to keep getting worse and weirder and until there's some actual regulation on it, which I have no idea how that's going to happen. I think this is a cautionary tale for everybody involved, player, family.
I mean,
coach,
but
whatever.
even with this situation, this was if you read between the lines, you go back and read the tweets and you go back and you see the right people, this was a pissing contest between John Ruiz at Miami and a high-profile booster at Florida who's named in that report, athletic report, Hugh Hathcock. That's all this was. It was a pissing contest to see, okay, who can put up the most money at the end. Okay, Florida does, and then backs out, doesn't want to pay it because he realizes, wait a minute, okay, I've calmed down now from getting into an argument, paying all this money. Now, what am I getting return on investment?
This is ego. This was a lot of ego. Like there's no question about that. This is sort of like
hurt the kid.
This is and frankly, again, nobody wins in any of this. Florida doesn't win. The kid doesn't win. The boosters don't win. Miami doesn't win. Florida, like nobody wins. Everybody kind of loses. It's not anybody's real fault except for the two guys you basically mentioned.
Yeah,
and it's not like, here's the other thing. Like he's a talented prospect.
Yeah.
He's a very talented kid, but again, I've talked to people that have seen him on the tours, and it's like he's pretty talented. He's pretty good, but when you see him standing next to C.J. Stroud throwing the football, like he's clearly not ready yet, and that's to be expected for a high school prospect. So
yeah,
I'm curious. I'm as curious as you are about where this all goes.
Resetting the market, if that's even
like
possible.
Arch Manning might be worth it. Tim Tebow might be worth it. Like there might be, like, even then, like Andrew Luck wasn't even a top 40 prospect.
No,
like overall. So I don't know. I think it's going to be fascinating to watch where it goes. So.
We just don't know. And I think that's when NIL continues to grow over the next year, we see, coaches bickering back and forth. I mean, look what Jim Boeheim was doing the other day with Syracuse basketball. Then had to walk it back 1,000 miles because of how much he knew that other coaches were pissed. So that's the day and age we're in. Speaking of, interesting situations, Alabama hiring Tommy Rees, offensive coordinator. Get your thoughts on that. And then, they went back, and I felt like Saban went the comfortable route with Kevin Steele. Once Todd Grantham kind of moved on, supposedly, back to the NFL, it was Kevin Steele. And this whole time, sorry, Alabama fans, you weren't getting Jeremy Pruitt. You weren't getting him from the first day. You weren't going to get him to the last day. Like, there was not a case you could present in front of Greg Sankey or the NCAA that would have been, okay, Jeremy Pruitt can come back and coach. What did your overall thoughts on Rees and Steele? It's kind of an interesting duo.
Yeah, I actually feel, if you go back and look at the last few years under Gus with Kevin Steele, like they had the identity of the team had changed.
Yeah.
At Auburn. And I think it actually had taken on the identity of Kevin Steele. And while I don't think Kevin Steele is worthy of being a head football coach anywhere, and particularly at the highest levels in the SEC, I do think he's a pretty solid defensive coordinator. Now,
agreed.
I think he's been around the league long enough. He knows how to build relationships. Is he like a rock star recruiter? I don't know. I think he's solid. I think he's a solid defensive coordinator. I think he's probably as good as Pete Golding. Especially, let's just say hypothetically, if Kevin Steele is focused on the job every second of the day.
Yeah.
Pruitt was the first call from what I understand.
Yes.
But that, again, he's got his hearings coming up, and if he gets you can't recruit show cause, for example, and Nick Saban's not going to have one of his top assistants not be able to recruit, at least in the short. To me, this strikes me as Kevin Steele for 2 years until Jeremy Pruitt's allowed back in.
That's it. There it is. It's a bridge hire. That's all.
That's what it feels like. And it's a pretty good bridge. I would say that's a pretty good bridge hire. As far as how well you could do. On offense, I'll say this: like Tommy Rees might be the right answer. He might be the right guy for Ty Simpson, Jalen Milroe. I think it's going to be Ty Simpson, but whoever it is, because Nick Saban wants to go down the field again. He wants to keep the offense a little bit more versatile and attack every blade of grass and that whole deal. And I'm not sure if Jalen Milroe does that. Is Tommy Rees the right guy? We'll find out. I don't think his scheme is significantly different from that of Bill O'Brien's. I will say the biggest takeaway from that search for me is that he went after a few big names, and I'm assuming there's a few big names he contacted that we don't know about.
Absolutely.
One of them might be floating around in a boat in Thailand right now on that buyout life.
Yep.
I was a little surprised that they didn't sort of land some big game as it pertains to this, because there was some bit. I mean, Dan Mullen is available.
Yes.
Like again, buyout life, broadcaster, a cushy job right now. But Dan Mullen is a genius when it comes to designing an offense.
He also told Shane Beamer, "Hey man, I'm good. No offense, but I'm good. I'm not coming back. That's not the right spot."
Now, if I'm Dan Mullen, like, am I going back to South Carolina? Like, no, I'm not. The last Florida head coach tried to go to South Carolina, it didn't work. So although he is just sitting around the Georgia facility drinking beer right now, counting his rings.
That's a good point.
Again, Tommy Rees, Kevin Steele, if you're a normal college football program that loses its coordinators and you end up with those two guys, normal college football programs would say, man, hell of a job. Alabama's not normal. And so I think really solid job on defense. I think you could do a lot worse. I think a really high floor for Kevin Steele. Got to replace some guys on that defense, of course, safeties and Will Anderson and a few others, but Alabama's going to be fine. It's going to be more about what does Tommy Rees look like as he develops and as the stress gets higher and the magnifying glass gets brighter and the spotlight gets brighter. Like, what does he look like when he does that? I know Cliff Kingsbury could do it. I know Dan Mullen can do it. I know Ryan Grubb could do it. I know Garrett Riley could do it. I know, and some of these guys that could do it, and they didn't they didn't get any of them. Now, were they maybe they weren't willing to pay $2 million a year, and that's a major factor for Nick Saban. But again, you could do a lot worse than Tommy Rees, but I am fascinated with what they look like as a team next year on offense, because the receiving core should be a little better. The offensive line should be a little better. Losing Gibbs is a big deal in the backfield, but what does the offense look like as it breaks in a lot of new pieces? I don't know, man. It's going to be interesting.
Well, I mean, I'm interested too in the quarterback situation. I mean, what if they get out there in the spring, Braden, and Ty Simpson ain't cutting it, or Jalen Milroe? Okay, that open portal period, will be a perfect time to potentially add somebody. I don't know if that's going to happen. I'm just saying, you got options. They've got options.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's there's a handful of teams in the SEC that I wouldn't be surprised if they added a quarterback. I'm not sure about Bama though.
Yeah,
because I think what Jalen Milroe gives you is a floor of like 2016 freshman Jalen Hurts.
Agreed. Yep. Perfect example.
Like that offense, which by the way scored a game-winning touchdown in the national championship, if not for Deshaun Watson. That offense is sort of your baseline of what they could look like with Jalen Milroe, and that's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. So I think that's kind of where they're starting from, and I think he wants to be far more down the field and vertical than that. Way more balanced, and not balanced in like the 50-50 sense, but like balanced in the you have no freaking clue what we're going to run on any given play sense. And I think Rees can give it to him. I think Simpson, they've had a pretty good track record with the 5-star quarterbacks the last 7-8 years. So I would bet on Ty Simpson winning the job, and I think they're both going to be fine. In fact, I would argue one of them might actually leave if they don't win the job.
We won't get the mass exodus that we saw like 6 years ago with a bunch of Alabama quarterbacks deciding to leave. Blake Barnett. I mean, that was wild.
And they all had the same name, it felt like, too.
Right.
They were all a part of the signing of the Declaration of Independence or something, like David Cromwell.
Yes. Future congressman.
Right.
No, it plays out. It's, we've got a situation right now with the Big 12 in the SEC. You know, the SEC would love for Texas and Oklahoma to hop in right when the ESPN deal starts. Now, you've got a situation where ESPN and Fox are kind of having to go back and forth a little bit when it comes to a television agreement because, okay, we don't want to give up the property of Texas and Oklahoma, but then they're coming to ESPN. So ESPN's got to do something to get. What are your thoughts on how this has played out? Because I still think we're going to see Texas and Oklahoma in the SEC before 25.
It's real. You do. I like that. I like that confidence. I tend to listen. I'm a cynic who thinks that money talks. So I tend to agree with you that I've always believed that all of this was going to happen way ahead of schedule. And sure enough, the playoff is happening way ahead of schedule. Listen, first of all, I'd like to point out that a Fox and an ESPN employee can get along just fine on this podcast. All right.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Just fine. It's okay. But like you put, you know, you have 14 SEC teams. You now have 11 Big 12 teams outside of Texas and Oklahoma.
Right.
So you have like 25 teams plus Texas and Oklahoma, plus 2 conference offices, plus 2 networks trying to all figure out how to make it all the pieces of the puzzle fit together. And I guess to me, the calculation is on the Big 12 side and with Fox and with the other teams in the league.
Yeah.
Is that there's clearly a number that's been offered to get them out of the deal.
Right.
And whether let's just hypothetically call it $25 million per school. Let's say you write a check for $25 million for Texas and $25 million for Oklahoma. They have clearly done the calculations on the Fox Big 12 side and said, look, over the course of these next 24 months, we can make more than that. And that's it. Like, to me, that's the simple math of it all. Like, where can we make more money?
Right.
And if you're the SEC, you're like, well, if we just wait an extra year, we pay nothing. So their number is probably lower than what you think it is because they can just wait 1 year. Like, they're not ready for 2023, right? So
no, I mean, I don't think that, but I think also when you're launching a network, when you're launching a whole different type of animal that the SEC is going to be doing, you would like for all, you know, chickens to be in the basket, eggs to be in the basket, however you want to put it, when you're launching or you know,
I mean, you're not really launching anything though, other than
you're
just
changing. Like, you're getting off CBS and you're going to ESPN, and
but you already have the 11 a.m. Central Time, God's time. You already have the noon kickoffs. You already have the SEC Network kickoffs at 7:30. You already have the ABC. You know, you already have like 4 out of the 5 time slots filled. All you're doing is just like grabbing that 3:30 time slot with a big game. And would you like Texas and Oklahoma to be involved in that? Sure. Oklahoma had a losing record this year. So,
yeah.
I mean, there's that. I do think Texas is on the way up, ironically, compared to where they've been, compared to where Oklahoma's been the last 20 years.
Right.
But it's all just lawyers and math and calculus. And right now it's the offer to buy out is too much for the SEC.
Yeah.
And again, think about what a home game is just worth for a local economy. Like, think about Ames, Iowa, and Fort Worth and Lubbock, Texas, like Waco, Texas. That's $12, $15, $18 million if Texas or Oklahoma comes to your campus and plays a game there. That's worth, you know, again, $15 million just for that one school's local economy. So
right.
Once you start doing the math on having them in the league for 2 years and selling rights around that and making money on home games around that and ticket sales and everything else, there's clearly a number there, and it's just higher than what what Fox is willing to accept.
I mean, I hit the other side of it too, because I look at the new teams that are joining the conference. Okay, Texas and UCF playing. Like, you know, okay, that's interesting. Oklahoma, UCF playing. Like, and that can go on with other schools, but I'm just saying you're adding something.
You don't think BYU and Oklahoma has a nice ring to it?
Yeah,
although
I mean,
good uniform.
That would be a great uniform combination. Yeah. It would look like, you know, an Oklahoma practice jersey where it's blue and they have red underneath. I mean,
Texas at Houston.
I mean, God, that's the battle of the Tom Herman screw ups. I mean,
but the politics involved in that, right?
Oh, like I get it. No, I agree.
The people that run, and by politics I mean like there's a lot of history in Texas, college football when it comes to politics. The reason that, you know, for example, Baylor got into the Big 12 in the mid 90s and not TCU is because a bunch of Baylor graduates were on the board of regents in the state of Texas and not TCU people. Like, it goes real deep. And for all those big time Houston people, like it matters to them that they get one game with Texas at home. Like that's worth a lot of money to them. So they're fighting on the Fox side of things with the Big 12 to keep them in for that one home game. And so again, there's too many moving parts. If the lawyers can figure it out, the only people that win in all of this are the lawyers. They win.
They're racking up hours right now.
Yeah.
And I don't think like a trade-off, it was mentioned somewhere. I don't think like a trade-off of an Ohio State Michigan game or Ohio State Penn State game is going to be you see what I'm saying? Like a trade-off of games and deal. Like I don't see how that would work.
What do you think the Texas Oklahoma game is just worth all by itself for 2 years for Fox?
I mean, just for Fox,
it's probably worth a lot.
Probably 40 million, maybe in average. I mean, you add up advertisement, you add up ticket sales, you add up being where they play at. I mean, probably, yeah. I get it. And it's a tough decision because Texas and Oklahoma would love to join earlier, but they put themselves in this spot. And now,
look, if I'm the SEC, I'm like, look, here's the number. That's it. Otherwise, we're going to wait, and it doesn't affect our deal with ESPN in the long term. It's a short term speed bump. Right. If you're the Big 12, of course, we were joking about the Miami, Florida egos, but there's also some diaper rash here from the Big 12. Like all these schools have hated Texas's dominance and resented Texas's dominance in terms of its force on the league since its inception in the mid 90s. Again, it has controlled the conference. Oklahoma, to a lesser degree, has controlled the conference.
Yeah.
And everybody hates them. They resent the fact that they make all the decisions. So they're like okay with them leaving, but it's like, no, we're not going to let you go without taking our pound of flesh. And so I get it. I understand. Like I know why people's egos are hurt with this for sure.
We're going to see how it plays out. I think it's going to be 6 or 7 months where we start hearing something again about this when they start up negotiations. Could be sooner. Hell,
I would. I mean, we know the Big Ten contract can change if they add teams, so it's already baked into a lot of these deals. So I think if Texas Oklahoma comes early, there's probably already some back room like, well, ESPN gets an extra this or pays an extra that, or
we're good now. Thank you.
So
appreciate you.
To me, it's simple. Like A is greater than B, and if A is greater than B for the Big 12, they're going to take A. That's it. That's what I would do at least. So,
hey, what are you thinking this weekend in the big game?
Oh, man, are we not even inside of content? We're not even allowed to call it the
I'll call it. Okay. Yeah, it's a damn Super Bowl on Sunday. I don't care.
This isn't an ad for anything. We're not promoting anything.
Actually, you know what? I'm a Fox employee. We're putting on the game, so we're good. I can say Super Bowl.
You got the game.
I forgot about that.
It's it's weird, and so I like. First of all, Jalen Hurts is one of the few people that could ever make Philadelphia likable.
What a great story, by the way. Like, that's just awesome. Yeah.
Only 3 players since the BCS have started the national championship game and started the Super Bowl, and that's Cam Newton, Joe Burrow last year, and now Jalen Hurts. And if you would have told me in 2016 when Jalen Hurts, or 2017 when he's getting benched for Tua, and then he loses his job the next year and he transfers away, if you'd have told me that Jalen Hurts at any point was going to be good enough to lead his team to the Super Bowl, like I would have been like, I love the kid. He's a great guy. I think he's handled himself through a lot of adversity, unlike any other college athlete I have ever seen in my life.
Agreed.
But if you're asking me if that's an NFL arm I'm looking at, I would have said no every time. So I think what's interesting, and again, I think Mahomes is very likable. The Chiefs are very likable. Andy Reid is very likable. I think the whole Chiefs thing is especially with Tyreek Hill gone, I think it's very likable.
Yes.
Kelsey's, raw entertainment at its finest.
The Trey Smith story, of working at the Super Bowl 3 years ago to now playing in the Super Bowl. Yeah.
I just think the Chiefs are, like, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe people hate the Chiefs because they've been there so many times, but like I find them to be a very likable team. I think Jalen Hurts is very likable. The rest of the Eagles, as a city and a franchise, like easy to hate, I think to some degree, but it reminds me a lot of the Super Bowl when the Eagles were there last time, which is 2 through 53. The Eagles are the far superior team, 2 through 53. The other side has the best quarterback by a mile. Like Patrick Mahomes, greater than Jalen Hurts, Tom Brady, greater than Nick Foles. But the reason the Eagles won that Super Bowl is because they were better along both lines of scrimmage pretty significantly. They were the best team, 2 through 53. The other team had the best quarterback. And it's very similar to what this situation is, which is the Eagles are clearly better along the offensive and defensive lines than Kansas City. But Kansas City clearly has the better quarterback and probably the better coach. So I think we're in for a really good game. I think the Eagles are going to score a bunch of points. I think the Chiefs are going to score a bunch of points. I will lean Chiefs, but if the Eagles get the sort of like the old veer triple option quarterback running game going, and it starts to get physical and it starts to have these long sustained drives, you're going to be putting a lot of pressure on Mahomes to deliver drive in and drive out. So I'm taking the Chiefs here.
I mean, that's fine. The Eagles are going to try their hardest to put Patrick Mahomes on his ass and mess with that ankle all game.
Easier said than done.
I agree.
I just think there's some unfinished business too with Mahomes. Like I feel like he's been here a lot to only have the one ring, and I think the Eagles as like there's some guys that know how to win championships. Brandon Graham, Fletcher Cox, like some of these guys know how to do that.
Right.
But a lot of the big pieces on that team this is a pretty new stage for them.
Yeah.
Although Hurts, I think again he'll be in control. The question is on 3rd and 8 in the fourth quarter with 7 minutes to go, and you're down by 4, and you got to have a first down throw. Can you make that throw when everyone knows you're about to throw it to A.J. Brown on 3rd and 9 or Devontae Smith on 3rd and 9? Like, can you do that? And I think that's the question we got to learn about Jalen Hurts. So even now, I'm still doubting him, Trey. I'm still doubting him.
I'm excited to see what the kid does, man. I think, he's been in tough situations before. I mean, and I know it's Super Bowl's a different stage, and I get that point of it. But the kid, it feels like sometimes he has ice water running through his veins, and I want to see what that looks like at Super Bowl.
The number of players that have won a national championship and won a Super Bowl at the quarterback position is like Joe Montana and Joe Namath.
Right.
Like Joe Burrow was trying to do it last year. And again, the number of players that have won a national title and just won a playoff game in the NFL is extremely small. It's like Trevor Lawrence, Jalen Hurts, Joe Burrow, Cam Newton. And like I think I'm missing one more, but like Deshaun Watson, I think is in there. But like, he's in some pretty rare air for a guy that we all kind of questioned. Does he have the right arm? And like, here he is starting on Super Bowl Sunday. So
either way, I just hope it's a fun game.
Amen.
Give me the halftime performance with Rihanna. That'll be fun. Whatever the stupid commercials that are already starting to come out, which I enjoy, by the way. No, it should be a fun weekend. I look forward to it. Braden, always fantastic, brother. I appreciate you coming on. Tell everybody where they can follow you and all your great shows.
Yeah, man. At Braden Gall on Twitter, the company 440 Sports, 440 Sports at 440 Sports. It's mostly sort of Tennessee-based, Nashville-based stuff, but a lot of SEC football in there as well. Got the Cover 2 podcast for Math on Sports, and of course, which is all college football across the country. And you know what? You got the YouTube page, and occasionally you might hear me on the mothership on ESPN Radio. So there you have it, big guy. At Braden Gall. That's all you need right there. You'll get everything else from right there. So.
Even your smart ass replies on Twitter. No,
I'm not leaving Twitter, man. I will go down with the ship. I'm going to die with the ship. It's my drug of choice.
Yep.
I'm never leaving Twitter.
No, just inject it into the veins, man. I'm good. Sorry. I don't even care how Elon is. I don't care. Do whatever.
Nope.
Still not leaving.
I've curated all the stupidity out of my feet. I'm good to go. So
yeah, we're good. Braden, thanks for joining, man. Have a great week.
Yeah, man. Have a good one.